Hey folks, it's Ben. We're here with our 1993 Chevy Lumina APV, and we're going to be doing some work on the intake today. So the issue we're having is that we're having high idle erratically, and per the software, the car is requesting a lower idle, but the idle air control motor is unable to provide it. It's still showing fairly wide open when it's requesting low, so I'm assuming something's going to be wrong with that. So it lives in this assembly right here, but in order to increase access, plus we got a lot of weird wireage going on here. And then my mass airflow sensor, I think we got to get one of those on order as well, since this one's been JB welded, oddly. So I'm just going to go ahead and take all of this out and kind of get a cleaning my way in and see how bad that mass airflow sensor actually is. I don't think I have a Series 1 replacement in any of my parts vehicles, but we'll get a good look at it, see if we get something on order. We'll start off with the air box. There is a video of me replacing this already. This one is kind of on loosey-goosey. I don't think it's completely stock, just because it's got a loop here but no nut. And I think a plastic rivet there holding that on. There's no nut holding that on. So I'm thinking this was a little butchered at some point. It technically still works. It's just not the stock configuration. I'm just wondering, are these nuts or are they just release me's? And you're here in a sec. So there's this assembly. So let's take it over to the bench and we'll make sure everything's nice and clear. They are just release me's, they aren't takeouts. I just took that one a little too far out. And then we have our big air cleaner sticking at us. This is fairly new, so I'm not overly worried about it either. And then we have our hole into the intake. So to get this guy off, we have a big clamp right here. We're going to unscrew that, and we should be able to wiggle this off the intake. And on the tripod here, that might, I always say that in editing, geez, I wish I'd tripoded that. So here we go. That wasp carcass there too. I'm going to disconnect this would be the temperature air sensor. Just leave it in the case there. This should be aluminum, so this should pop right off. So yeah, we've got some a little bit of tree debris here before the mass airflow sensor screen. So that was a good move to take that off. Next up, we actually have the mass airflow sensor itself. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect that, which is just a plug. And in theory, it has, I don't know why it's cracked here. So we might go in the market for one of those, but let's go ahead and take it out because we're going to want to clean it. Flathead or Phillips. Oh, how hard are these in there? I have this weird purple wire that actually scoots off over here and locks into one of the injectors, unfortunately. I believe it's a RPM indicator for the old remote start system. I'm hoping to maybe use it for a tachometer for the future use. Otherwise, I'd like to restore the fuel injector plug back to normal. I get it out all the way, pop right out, and spray it with some mass airflow sensor cleaner, and we'll set it aside so it can evaporate dry. It's just a little like a thermistor almost. As the air goes by it, it cools it, and I'm not sure why it was repaired. Weird. Okay. Yeah, I released the wiring harness to come back here. I believe what we have here is our throttle position sensor. Nope, that's this right here. Our throttle position sensor is below it. And here's the
idle air control motor.
Oddly, it's got flathead screwdriver bits, maybe Phillips generic, but they're at a weird angle. So typically you want to come in with something that's 90 degrees or a really small ratchet to get these out. Okay, so before we come in here, let's go ahead and unscrew it. It's a unplug it. It's a tab with a pull out again. But because it's so close to the throttle position sensor, it might be easier to do it first. Give you some space. And they come down here and get it out. So now we have all our sensors open. The throttle position sensor is fine, so we don't need to take it out, but We do need to take out the... We're missing a bolt there, so somebody's been in here before messing with things. Now these have Loctite on them because obviously GM did not want them coming out. I will put them in with anti-seize because this aluminum and the metal of the bolts tend to become way too friendly with each other, and they'll never come out and they'll strip out. So I prefer to have them come out too easy and just give them a little bit more torque on the Ingo. This guy is not coming out friendly. It might have been cross-threaded going in. It's really hard. This should wiggle out. There's a rubber ring in here. Keep it airtight. So I actually have three. So we have what we pull out of the van here. You can tell because it still has its ring on it. We're having some issues with it. So I'm going to go ahead and not put it back in. But it looks fairly clean. It's not gross by any means. But it could use a cleaning. Then I have this one, which is fairly new actually. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. So I'm probably going to put this one back in. It probably came out of my Grand Prix, maybe, or another Buick with a 3.1 Series 1, 3.8 Series 1. And then this was the one I bought at Bucks, which is actually quite bad. It's fairly dirty, but all they had in the yard at the time. I'm going to go ahead and roll the dice on the middle one here because actually I don't even think it needs a cleaning at this point. I think it's fairly good to go. I will squirt a little bit of lubricant on it actually. What's this? That's Deep Creep. A little bit of, not lubricant as much as cleaner. The biggest thing I want is the seat to be clean because that's obviously the surface that's squirting against it. And I'm going to get a little bit of throttle cleaner and squirt it up the hole and shoot it with a magnet. Not a magnet, a mirror. And I'll see if I can take you along and we'll just take a look at the hole to make sure it's not overly carboned up from the EGR valve because that's our big criminal there. I'm going to go ahead and see if this O-ring will roll off the Bucks unit though. Like a nice gentle ring. Yeah. A little carbony, and then we'll roll it onto this guy. And there you go. We'll put a little bit of, very little bit of sealing, a little bit of thread lubricant on that as well, just so it gets an extra seal up there and it's good. The plugs match, obviously. Series 1 engines are fairly friendly in that regard. And so we're good to go on that, but let's go take a look and see if we can see in the hole. As you can see, there are some carbon deposits a little bit up in there. That's the orifice where we're closing and letting our idle air go through. So we're just going to go ahead and soak that in some cleaner. We'll wash our mass airflow sensor, and then we'll get everything back ready for repair. So we've got some CRC throttle body clean. And so what we can do now is attack everything, including the mass airflow sensor screen, which looks a little dirty, with this cleaner. Can you stop partying? Thanks. Just sit here, boy. Thanks. And we also want to work the throttle, which is right here. I'm going to come in here with a toothbrush or any sort of brush I can get up there and just kind of scruff that up a little bit. Break up anything that might be up there. Got a toothbrush that's a little deformed and I broke it, so I can get in there and kind of... Look at that black stuff come out. None of that is good. This is where editor me's like, nothing changed from the first shot, you fool. But I think it looks a lot cleaner than it was, especially where our little valve sits. So that'll be great. So we got that fixed out. So let's go ahead and start reassembly. Don't lose those guys. Let's put a little anti-seize on everything and put this part back, and then we'll talk about the mass airflow sensor. Okie dokie. So we have our... Now, I usually throw these away when they're bad. That's why I kind of figured that this one's going to be okay. And I'm actually going to lightly do just above the ring here. I believe in getting this smeared everywhere. Putting it in is going to be the same as taking it out. In terms of... Now, this is where things might get tricky, because this is based on a different type of car. So my plug's actually in a different orientation, I think. So no biggie, just a thing to remember. And then my formerly Loctited screws, the pinch a little anti-seize on that, and we'll hand start these back in. I never thought about thinking of the plug orientation. So there you go. So I just want those snug, not tight by any means. And you can see against the plate there, you just want to make sure we have an air seal, because this would be unmetered air. We can go ahead... Oh, there's another bit gone. We can come back now, and we have our throttle position sensor plug. We'll go ahead and plug that back in. We know that it's okay next to our software, and should have enough wiring to come on over and plug in like so. And so now we're left with our fuel pump test connector, our intake air temperature, and our mass airflow sensor. So that's good to go there. So let's go ahead and clean our mass airflow sensor. Let me show you how I do that. So here's our mass airflow sensor. This is made in Japan. Doesn't say AC Delico on it, so it looks like it's probably an aftermarket unit. So that's less cool even as well. Some of these electronics can be fairly fussy. Now I think those are thermistors. Don't quote me on that. Those two little guys you see on the end there. And what happens is that a curtain is put across them, and as the resistance changes, and it already knows the air temperature, the computer can calculate how much air is going by based on the loss. Now I'm using an actual mass airflow sensor cleaner, and so we're just gonna soak these right down, because they'll get a layer of dirt on them, and then they won't quite work as well. So you can actually pick up a couple points of fuel efficiency and all that good stuff with just a little bit of a soaking of some cleaner. Looks like these are actually fairly dirty. So it looks like, and I'm going to go ahead and touch it, that might be, there's some actual built up material on that. So good to get these washed. And we'll put this back in. Also, an air, and you can see there's some corrosion here, so it's also been friend here for a while. So let's go ahead and paint this in anti-seize as well, just because that stuff doesn't go away, and it helps keep corrosion at bay. And I'm from the Northeast, so I'm used to everything corroding. that's how I live. So we'll take this back over to the car. We'll bring our screws over, which we've just left on our container there. And yeah, you can see that ring there, and it sits. So actually, I don't know why it's corroding so bad right there, unless this is a junkyard unit that came off another car, which is looking more likely. So let's just paint that there, there, there. Not going to worry about that so much. Wondering, geez, why isn't there a... This must be enough to squish down upon that hole right there. Work out. This should pop in as such. And yeah, I don't know why that's put there. But I think in our shopping list of stuff to get, we'll get a new mass airflow sensor. And I'll put a little bit dab of grease on those screws and we'll sink them right back in. Now that they're in, I'm going to if I had a screwdriver here without having to walk, I would just go use it, but I'd have to go get it. So I'm just gonna tightly snug these up just to keep a seal on the mass airflow sensor against the throttle body. Now all we have left is our temperature sensor. No, another one gone. Shoot. Anyway, so what I'm going to do off video now is I'm going to search through with a flashlight. I'm looking for vacuum leaks. Good thing to always just check to see if you've got something leaking, just a climate control system I'm working on. So I'm going to scan for that, and then I'm going to put the intake on. I'll time lapse you for that, and we'll be good to give it a test fire. Okay, let's do a start. We just put new power steering fluid in it, synthetic stuff, and we messed with the idle air control motor. So let's go ahead and go. Let's see how it runs, kitten. And we fixed a big vacuum leak.